So this is our last section of physiology. So I cannot wait to get through the GI system and you will have knocked this section out. So we're talking about the GI system, and in all honesty, I think this is pretty low yield in terms of all the physiology that we've already covered, but we're still gonna go through it. So a couple things here is we're just talking about the GI system, and the GI, their whole purpose is for us to take the nutrients in and use them or get it out, right? So control of the GI system is what we're gonna talk about first. And basically here, it's regulated by neural and endocrine pathways. When we think about the neural receptors, we have some mechanical receptors that tell how stretched out our stomach is, for example, which tells us, whoa, slow down, too many nutrients. And then we have chemoreceptors, which monitor basically concentrations of substances like hydrogen ions and proteins, things like that. Then osmoreceptors monitor osmolality. So those are basically the neural and endocrine pathways. Now, when we start talking about hormones, there's different GI hormones, and I listed them there. You guys can go ahead and read through them. I want to go ahead and go through secretions. Now, secretions in the mouth, we have our saliva, and then we go to the esophagus. Just skim through that. I want to go to the stomach. Now, when we talk about stomach, basically when food enters the stomach, it's already been chewed up by us, and then it mixes with gastric juices and chyme, okay? And then it makes just something that we can kind of start grinding down to be delivered into the blood system or to keep moving into our digestive tract. So I want you guys to know the 4 different types of cells that are produced from the stomach, okay? So we have our neck cells, and those secrete mucus, okay? The mucus is kind of a good barrier because this is the only area of our digestive tract that should be acidic. So they secrete mucus. Next, we have our parietal cells. And what does parietal cells release? Good, HCl, so hydrochloric acid, as well as intrinsic factor. And in pathology, we talked about pernicious anemia, right? So vitamin B12 is used in our body, and we break that down with intrinsic factor. It helps us absorb it, okay? The next is chief cells, which secrete pepsinogen. And then we have our G cells, which basically G is easy because it promotes gastrin. Now, if you look in that box there, gastrin is what we call an intrinsic secretion, and it goes throughout the bloodstream. The rest of those stay in the stomach where they're used, and those are called extrinsic secretions, okay? Good. So again, you'll see there that it says the only area in the whole GI tract that's acidic is the stomach, and the mucus as well as bicarbonate helps kind of keep that in line so we don't get ulcers. And what are 2 things that can cause peptic ulcer disease? Right, chronic NSAID use like aspirin and ibuprofens, and what else? H. pylori, good. All right, let's keep going. So after we go to the stomach, then we go to the small intestine. Now, a couple things about the small intestine is that 1, it's crazy long, right? And there's 3 different parts. I would just know the order of them. So it goes to the first section, which is the duodenum, and then it goes to the jejunum, and then to the ileum. Okay, so those are the 3 different sections. Now, a couple things in the duodenum, that is responsible for pancreatic juice and bile, okay? I would make sure that you know that that is where those are secreted into to help us continue breaking down our food. Now, after the jejunum, that's when we have more things that are absorbed into the bloodstream. After it goes to that, it's the ileum, and that's the last place before it goes to the colon. Now, the colon, its major responsibility is just to draw out any other water that we need before it goes to our rectum, and boom, the process is done, right? Okay, so let's go ahead and now, since we've kind of gone through nutrition and getting that out, let's go to the pancreas. Now, we've talked about the pancreas quite a bit. We've already talked in the endocrine section of physiology about the hormones. So you guys, this is a good review. If you want to, just pause the video and just kind of review what hormones are there. And then the next organ in the digestive system we're going to talk about is the liver. And again, we've talked about the liver quite a bit. Couple things that I want to bring up though, just in case you haven't thought about it for a while, is that the liver produces bile, okay? Actually, we're going to talk about 4 things that it does. But the first thing is I want you guys to know it produces bile, okay? The second thing is that this metabolizes carbohydrates, proteins, and lipids. The third thing is that it helps break down red blood cells. And when it does that, it can either reuses it in iron or it's going to eliminate it in bilirubin. Now, people who have different red blood cell issues, like for example, sickle cell. They're breaking down a lot of red blood cells. So that liver is super busy. And when that happens, when they have too much bilirubin or they can't get it converted, then we're talking about jaundice. And so that's why sometimes a sickle cell patient can look jaundice, and you might want to check a bilirubin on them if they present to your office. And then the last thing is that it's going to eliminate waste from the body. And don't forget, when we're talking about pharmacology, this is where the majority of first pass metabolism happens as well. Okay, all right, good. So let's keep going. I guess there are a couple more things. Also, it synthesizes plasma proteins. You can read through that. It also secretes and modifies hormones, which we've also talked about earlier in the endocrine section. Okay, so next, let's go to gallbladder. Gallbladder, the big thing about this is that it releases and stimulates bile, and it does that and it puts it into the small intestine. Okay, all right, good. So we're getting so close to being done with this section. GI motility, you guys can read through that. This is just talking about how it moves food throughout the GI tract. So you see there we have peristalsis, gastric contractions, and then segmentation. Just read through that. I think it's low yield. And we're getting to the very last page of physiology. So here we're just talking about, again, hostrations, mass movement. I think this is really low yield, so you can just take a peek at it and be done with physiology. So I'm super proud of you for going through physiology, and I think that not only is it going to be good for just this section, but it's also a good helpful reminder for pharmacology and pathology. So I hope that you do amazing on this. Continue to study. Don't forget to answer these last 5 questions and keep on studying. Thanks so much.